Hello and welcome. So I'll continue with your comments and questions today. Always a delight to receive your words of encouragement, and great to have comments and questions that require a response or discussion, something for us to talk about here. We're nearing the completion of this Samadhi Sala, meditation hall. Now, internally at least, externally, we have planting, which is an ongoing, long-term project to make the surrounding environment very beautiful, more beautiful than it already is. And we have yet to begin construction, building or groundworks of a visitor's facility, washroom, which will also include its own water supply. And on that note, I have a bit of a difficulty. I'm going to skip for the first time in a long time Pindapata this morning to go in search of a free-flowing water supply, because the water's been cut off, or the pump is broken. However, the water was supplied to my one tap in my kuti, which is all I have, a tap and a bucket, and that's enough. I'm a monk of very simple requirements. All of this opulence around me is not necessary. That's for your sakes and for visitors' sakes, for locals, punya karma. But free-flowing water is something I've come to learn even pre-ordination days, living in solitude in the wilds, is one of the main requisites. So important it's not even mentioned as one of our 4 requisites of food, shelter, clothing and medicine. But in our 8 items we own, artakarya, we are allowed to possess a water filter, which I exchange these days for a cup, because one doesn't ordinarily need a water filter. But I have in the past lived by rivers and relied on that as my source of water. You'll see these luxurious mats. These are beautiful. These are mats that are handmade locally. They take weeks, if not months, for a lady to weave this grass, I'm not sure exactly what it is, into this material to form these mats. And you see they're a bit bumpy. It's because they're been really newly offered and supplied, so it takes a while for them to settle. So you see the support, but I don't seem to be able to convey the importance of free-flowing water. I mean, one needs it to use the toilet. One needs it to wash one's bowl after you've eaten. In this heat, one needs to regularly wash, or rinse at least, one's robes. When you're rationing one bucket that you fetched of water, it's very difficult to do all of those things. So I'm at a loss to know what to do. I'll go and try and find a nearby tap that's not too far away to fill up my bucket on a regular basis. And in that way, hopefully, they will see the importance. I don't know. I've spoken in Sinhala and everything, but no, it just smiles and yes, and yeah, that's all I get. But there we go, we'll see. I was going to skip the first question, but as I'm probably suffering a little, I think the overnight sit on Uposatha is catching up with me a little bit, as it often does, a few days later. And this difficulty with the water, and it is a difficulty, a big difficulty. I think if it wasn't that I need to stay here until the end of the Vasa, I'd probably have to go and stay in a monastery for a while, or find somewhere, until it's the issue has resolved itself. It's not for the want of trying, but there we are. The first question is, are you in sotapana state? So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that question. We have this word sotapana. Usually in English they say stream enterer, which is the first stage of enlightenment, when one has abandoned Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view, has no doubt in the teachings of the Dharma, the Buddha, the Dharma, that is the Four Noble Truths, and the virtues of following the Noble Eightfold Path, is by no way in any doubt as to what is right view in that Noble Eightfold Path. That is the understanding of karma, the understanding of and the nature of rebirth as a result of causes and conditions, that karma, which is actions, and the abandonment of rites and rituals that you believe to be supportive to a better way of life, in the sense that it's prayer and worship, so relying on external help, superstition, if you like. So puja, paying respects to the Buddha, offering incense, lights, flowers, bowing to an image of the Buddha is not necessarily rites and rituals. This is mindful practice. But if this is performed with a view to getting something from it, as if by magic, then that's rites and rituals. So the abandonment of all of these aspects, especially that of self, is the first stage of enlightenment, and one of the major steps in the path towards Nibbana. Subsequent steps, Sakadagami, Anagami and Arahant. Sakadagami, Anagami, so once returner and non-returner following stream entry. If you visualize crossing a stream, going to the other side, a once returner comes back, a non-returner stays on the island, and it is on the island where one becomes an arahant, attains to Nibbana. It's a sort of imagery we get from the English translation. It's not quite that in the meaning of the Pali words, but Sakadagami, Anagami are a reduction gradually of the five hindrances, or sensual desire and ill will, that are still there as a sotapana. So with my current predicament, am I feeling any sensual desire or ill will? If I was a sotapana, you probably still will. If you're a Sakadagami, you probably wouldn't, or less. But we don't worry about this kind of stuff. There's no gain or use in especially asking or wishing to know what others' states of mind are, other than out of compassion and concern if someone else is suffering. So, apart from the fact a monk is not allowed to state their attainments in any way, primarily because if they are mistaken, they could mislead others and break the precept of lying, musawada. So it must be held very closely, the rule to monks that they are not to speak of their attainments. The other reason being is it can be perceived by others whom are offering to individual monks rather than the Sangha, which is the way it should be, that certain monks are of higher attainment than others and therefore deserve, which is the wrong word, but misappropriately attributed, more offerings, where in fact all offerings are given, all donations are given, all generosity is towards the Sangha as a whole, not individual monks. So it's an irrelevant question, an irrelevant answer. A sotapana would have no answer to that question. Who is a sotapana? What is a sotapana? Would be the only answer. Oh dear, I was hoping we could get onto a cheery note to cheer me up, but this sounds like a not so cheery kind of comment or question, but I'm going to not skip any. Meditation, here we go, is a stupid act, like many other habits that people cling to in order to delude themselves, to dream. Meditation is the true natural kind that you do in every moment of your daily life while you do things. This is meditation. And then this nonsense you see is self-hypnosis, drugs. So I'm not sure what nonsense you're seeing that is self-hypnosis and drugs, because I very rarely give guided meditations or in fact do much meditation other than in the live sessions, and there's nothing really to be seen except my back to the camera and me sitting doing nothing. So in some respect you're quite right, but you're misinterpreting there what Buddhist meditation is. It isn't trance-like transcendence of reality. It is developing concentration to focus on reality, experientially see the truth, the characteristics of existence. What you describe as meditation in the natural kind in every moment of your daily life, we call sati, which is samasati in the Pali, usually translated as mindfulness, but it's far deeper than this modern interpretation of mindfulness. It is, yes, a meditation, and goes hand in hand and cannot be separated from sama samadhi, right concentration, which is what we're developing when we're practicing as Buddhist practitioners in our meditation. So I would suggest you switch off and don't watch anymore if it's offensive, or maybe if you're interested, then before judging, look at some more videos and see what we talk about here. See how we approach the subject of meditation. Listen to what other people have to say about their own practice and how we discuss those obstacles and how to overcome them. And then you might get an understanding as to what Buddhist meditation is. But thank you for your comment anyway. You often advise to do 1-hour meditation sessions, but I find that I start to struggle with dullness after around the 15-minute mark. Is it better to do multiple 15-20-minute sits instead? If you can sit for an hour, that is physically, then stick with 1 hour. When you become dull, you'll know that you're becoming dull and falling asleep. Dullness. Note it if it helps. Say dullness or sleepy or wanting something else, wanting it to be otherwise. Noting in this way will help you wake up, focus the attention back on the breath. Splitting it is just doing lots of, however close together they are, lots of short meditations. If it's a physical issue, then you start with 15 minutes, build it to 20, to 30, to 40, increasing it eventually to an hour, gradually, with time. This also allows the mind to gradually, with time, like these mats, gradually with time will settle and become flat on the floor, like this one. So just be patient with your practice. Develop the quality of khanti, the Pali word for patient endurance. And this will help you allow the body and the mind to be able to sit for longer and longer, eventually all night. And it's not a necessary practice, but sometimes if you're an experienced meditator, to sit all night is a very interesting experience, especially if it's only once or twice a month. In my case, I hadn't done it for quite some time until just in this last few days. And I certainly notice the difference between when we were having to do it every 15 days on the Uposatha nights in the monastery that I was staying in. Now, whilst it's choice, and I choose not to do it on every Uposatha, but chose on this just past Uposatha to sit all night, I must say I'm not feeling that great as a result of it. But there we go. There was also prior to that a lot of chanting, and that did send me into a sort of semi-trance state, the sort that this previous commentator considered stupid, and is, yes, something in Buddhist meditation we avoid. We are not doing yogic breathing exercises to try and bring our sort of, I don't know, hyperbolic states up or hyperventilate in a way. None of this. We're just sitting doing nothing and developing wisdom, completely the opposite to being stupid. So yes, it's difficult an hour. Know that, appreciate it, understand that the work you're putting in to get to that hour without dullness is the job in hand. It's what we're here to do as meditators. If you have the time, just do it. If it's horrible, still just do it. If it's ecstatic and joyful, don't get attached to that. Next time, it might not be. Let go of that feeling and be prepared. But stick with it. Keep doing it. It's just that. I'm starting to cheer up now. I want to make robes for myself from excess fabrics I have. Is there a particular construction method for the robe that would be recommended? And then you go on to say, that's the question, then you go on to say, it's hard to find anything about the construction without being flooded with people just making costumes, but I'm looking for the traditional method of making the robes. So the traditional method of making the robes is taught to us monks prior to our ordination while staying for a long time in a Buddhist monastery leading up to ordination, and is a sort of a privileged knowledge for ordained bhikkhus. It's like joining the Freemasons or something like that. These are skills we need as bhikkhus, but as bhikkhus alone. Now there are some lay people who make robes, but more often than not, the lay people's prerogative is that of the provision of cloth for the making of the robes. It is the robes, the monks, the bhikkhus themselves that are making the robes once offered the cloth. So on the katina, which is coming up shortly, the lay people will offer white cloth. Not robes, but it should be white cloth. Then this is sewn by the bhikkhus whom are trained in the manner of how to do this. And it is not something you will find on YouTube. Not the real method. Likewise, it is possibly not the case that you will find the inner workings of Freemasonry available or readily available on YouTube either, because it isn't something that's useful to lay practitioners or to, for instance, non-Freemasons. What goes on there behind closed doors is within that society. a society with secrets, not a secret society. There are known Freemasons and organizations of Freemasonries that everybody knows about. It's not a secret. But what they do, it has its secrets. Now, monastic life, bhikkhu ordination, isn't about keeping secrets, but the skills involved in sewing robes from cloth are very detailed and require a great deal of training and practice. Now, myself, I can't do it. I roughly know how it's done, the pattern, and could do it if I tried, but I've never sewn a robe from scratch. I might have to one of these days, because the robes here that are readily available are a little different to the ones that I've become used to. But hopefully this set of robes I have will go on for a long, long time. Well, especially if it's never washed ever again. That seems to be the possibility that's coming up. It might last a lot longer. It'll just be held together with sweat and dirt. So, yes, it's not something you need to know unless you are ordaining as a monk. And then you'll be taught those valuable skills. So why you need to make them, I'm not sure. It's not something you'd wish to wear. They're not that practical and they're not that comfortable. And we wear them when we're not in public in various ways. But mostly this robe is just hanging over a rope or string or on a hook or folded neatly over a chair somewhere, and we just walk around in our lower robe, our skirt. So yeah, I'm not sure why you want to make robes. If it's to offer to the Sangha, just offer cloth or ask them what it is they need. So this is about some of the issues we've been having with sound and vision. Why this video comes over synchronization. This is the worst. How can I delete this? Well, just don't watch it. You can't delete it. It's not yours to delete. I did look into that at the time. It's some while ago I had that message. In fact, that was actually not the video itself. It was sometimes YouTube's a mystery to me. It's another one of those organizations with secrets rather than a secret organization, because getting to the bottom and understanding how these videos are processed once they're sent up there is, without trailing through strings and strings of answers on forums, which are never necessarily that reliable, it's hard to understand how it works. But basically, I send a video up, it's processed. Sometimes that can take minutes, sometimes it can take weeks, and it has taken months for it all to be synchronized, or to be audio dubbed, or to have subtitles, or to have the lips moving with the sound. All of these things coming together are miracles in themselves. So I don't question it. It doesn't matter. Close your eyes. You don't need to delete it. You can listen to the sound. It's enough. The visual aspect of this is not important so much as the listening to what it is we're talking about. But saying that, I do understand it is frustrating. Hopefully it's audible now. Hopefully it's synchronizing. I'm not a professional. I'm very much an amateur. I'm not even, I don't think, a good amateur. I just rely on sadha, faith, that if I push the button, it all happens, as it has done for the last 2 years. And maybe 3 years, I'm not sure. And in that sense, I'm relying on luck, or hoping the causes and conditions I've put in place for it all to come together nicely are sufficient for YouTube to be able to do something with it. But please do keep coming with your feedback, useful feedback that is, if there are difficulties with the audio at your end, because otherwise I wouldn't really know. So I do check it from time to time, but I only have the video I record here. When it comes to the live streaming, it's another whole different game, system, idea. That, to some extent, is easier, and I have considered only doing live stream and dispensing with this recording aspect. But I'm not so sure as to whether or not then people get to see all of those live streams. They don't necessarily get processed as quickly and appear at a set time or become available at a set time after they've been shown live. And of course, my live is not your live. My live is now at 4 a.m. is probably your afternoon or evening, something like that, which is great. But this video is being recorded and will go out, you know how it is. Let's not talk about that anymore. Isn't just the 5 moral precepts too little for attaining jhana? To attain jhana, one needs really good sila to unify his mind. Upacharya samadhi is already difficult. So upacharya samadhi is like sotapana is a name for the first level of enlightenment. Upacharya samadhi is the sort of a first stage of deeply absorbed samadhi. So almost jhana, but it's actually something considered in some practices and traditions as leading up to jhana, where you are to a degree secluded from the 5 hindrances, the obstacles of of sensual desire, ill will, tiredness, restlessness and worry and doubt. And yes, it's already difficult to attain to that level of absorption. With regards to the 5 moral precepts, they are that, moral precepts, refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and taking of intoxicants. They are the foundations for samadhi. They are enough. If you require support in keeping those precepts, you can extend it to 8 precepts, 10 precepts, or even ordain and have 227 precepts for a monk, or as a nun 311 precepts. But all of the precepts over and above those 5 are a code of conduct, guidelines to support those first 5. So eating in the afternoon, the 6th precept, isn't morally abhorrent. There's nothing unvirtuous about doing what everyone does, eating in the afternoon and evening. But it is suggested that if one refrains from eating in the afternoon, it is supportive of your practice and therefore supportive of keeping those other 5 precepts, as is refraining from entertainment, refraining from sleeping in luxurious places. And then we have so many more in our Patimokkha rules of 227 and the thousands of Vinaya rules that are mainly supportive of those 5 precepts. But it is the 5 precepts which really mean just one: do no harm either to oneself or to others. The 5 precepts just make it easier to understand how we do no harm, by not killing or stealing, sexual misconduct, lying or taking of intoxicants. That is enough for a foundation of samadhi. And then with determined practice with your samadhi, you will experience upacharya samadhi, that absorbed state of focused concentration on your meditation object. And this will lead to jhana. But if you want to keep 8 precepts, you can. No one is saying otherwise. The 5 aggregates, could you cover this topic in a video if you haven't already? So I'm pretty sure I talk about this in every video, but I haven't yet in this, when I say that we are not what we believe we are in this physical body, or indeed even this thinking brain intellectually, what we feel and experience with this physical body, and the experience and the results of this thinking brain's activity is what we regard as our persona, personality view, Sakkaya Ditthi. But that is just the 5 aggregates, which are rupa, this physical body, which includes the sense organs of the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin to feel, and the thinking brain to think and process. This is rupa, the first of the 5 aggregates, followed by vedana, which is feelings. It's a funny sort of order sometimes, but feelings really come as a result of the third of the 5 aggregates, which is sanya, recollection. Because feelings are physical feelings and emotional feelings. Even piti and sukha, piti being rapture and physical rapture, and sukha being happiness, mental joy, are vedana, feelings of the physical nature, part of the 5 aggregates, resulting from sanya, which is recollection or memory, recall. So one experiences through sense contact, say, seeing a beautiful view, recalling that this is a beautiful view as opposed to a unbeautiful view. And with this recollection gets a good feeling, happiness and a physical, nice sense of well-being. The vedana as a result of sanya. Then there is sankhara, which is mental formations. So after rupa, it's all in the thinking brain's activities that the other 4 khandhas, or aggregates as we translate that into English, are the 5. It is in the thinking brain that the other 4 are happening, are working, are creating this experience we view as ourselves. A wrong view, because right view is understanding that that is the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates, and just that, and not a you, an I, a me, and therefore no one to be a sotapana, a sakadagami, an anagami, an arahant. Those are separations from these 5 aggregates. Sankhara, mental formations, or everything we experience with this physical body and thinking brain is sankhara, and all sankhara are anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. It says quite adamantly there, anatta, not self. All sankhara resulting in these 5 khandhas, what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Think about this experience is sankhara. It's impermanent, it's unsatisfactory, out of our control, or it's not a self. And then vijnana, consciousness, this is not citta. Citta, mind, is separate from vijnana, that is this processing, intellectual thinking brain, processing sense consciousness. So vijnana is sense consciousness as opposed to consciousness or awareness. Vijnana isn't awakened, isn't liberated. It is part of the 5 khandhas. It is the link between rupa and nama. So physical body, including the sense organs, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, thinking brain, and that thinking brain. Bringing it all together, sense consciousness, the 5 khandhas. This is the illusion of self. this is to be abandoned. Abandonment of Sakaya Ditti is one of the factors of a sotapana, the first stage of enlightenment. Not thinking that these 5 khandhas are important. Maybe a sotapana would have no concerns over there being water or not being water. But on the other hand, maybe a sotapana would wish to progress with their practice and know that these 5 khandhas, these aggregates, require water in order for one to progress. So we look after these physical bodies and nurture these thinking brains as they are our vehicle towards enlightenment. But the driver of that vehicle, the driver and passenger, the person en route from A to B, from samsara to nibbana, is the citta, the witness. It is that is subject to rebirth if it isn't liberated from these 5 khandhas. So I do speak of that to varying degrees in probably every talk, and today I've just expanded upon it in a summarily way, but hopefully that's clear. Wow, it looks amazing. You need them to paint your hut if they have any leftover paint. Well, yes, there was, and they did. It's had a coat, it looks all spruced up, and yes, externally everything's looking bright and clean and white and lovely. But there's no water. I think I'll probably make this the last comment for now. Then I'll be getting ready for morning puja, and then I'm just going to try and find an outside tap that's nearby. Maybe overnight something may have been done. You see, people have offered to bring buckets of water, which is very kind, but I'm not sure they realize how much a monk, especially a foreign monk in this climate, how much water one uses. It's a lot. I've lived without water for 3 years in a van without a water supply, but still nearby there were these taps that people used for giving water to their dogs and things like that, because it was near the beach, and I could fill up bottles, and that's okay. You can live like that in temperate climates, but in this heat, with the amount of sweating that goes on and the environment, you use a lot more water, as well as you're always having to wash your feet because of the sand and rinse your feet. So short of having someone walking back and forth with buckets of water all day long, it really, it sounds like I'm being sort of picky and fussy now, and I am. It's the only thing I do get quite concerned about, because we can live for a long time without everything, but we need water. We're not talking about drinking water here. I have that in bottled form because people offer to me that in abundance, but I don't want to start using that for going to the toilet. I think that's disrespectful of that offering. But it might come to that. But the problem is I've been discouraging people from offering me plastic bottles of water because it didn't make any sense. Now it's perhaps beginning to make sense why they were doing that. Okay, I've heard that the principles of Buddhism are universal. They're universal laws and principles. So from what I understand, wherever there is life in this universe, these laws and principles apply, regardless of the level of consciousness of that particular life form existing in this infinite universe. Please help me clarify this point. Yes, there's the Four Noble Truths, that there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, there is an end to this suffering, and that end is found by the Noble Eightfold Path, the path leading to the end of suffering. The establishment of right view, through right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. That is the universal law, and that is experienced by all beings in this universe, all sentient beings, whether they know it or they don't know it, whether they're consciously aware of it and those truths, which are not a doctrine, are not a belief system, are not teachings, just facts of existence, inclusive of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, anicca, dukkha, anatta, are the characteristics of experience, of existence, of life, of all sentient beings. Whether or not consciously known, that is the experience of all beings. Enlightenment is coming to understand and know the Four Noble Truths, and through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. So I hope that helps you to clarify your statement, but it isn't as complicated as your statement with universal laws and principles and understanding anything intellectually. It's evident all around us. If you don't see suffering, then just try and sit still for as long as you possibly can. The second you need to move, there is unsatisfactoriness. There is evidence of dukkha. There is suffering. And what is the cause of that suffering? It is wanting the situation to be other than it is, desire. You won't die if you don't move, but you really need to move. You want to move. It shows you. You don't have to be that clever to understand that. That's clear, isn't it? Already. Through experience. This dharma is experiential, not intellectual. And the end of suffering comes about when you are realizing that, and able then to let go of that desire to move and just sit with it, with patience. And continue through, as with this previous commentator who could only get to 15 minutes before feeling dull, continue through that barrier, through the dullness. Breathe deeply, open the eyes for a moment, but carry on for the hour. Knowing, understanding, you're wanting it to be otherwise. Knowing this is the desire that you're coming experientially to understand and to get to grips with. Through understanding its eradication, that is the eradication of greed, lobha, hatred, dosa, and delusion, moha. Greed, hatred, and delusion. The three root causes of suffering, dukkha. Essentially desire to have something you haven't, or not to have a situation as it is. And ignorance, or the mistaken belief that we are these five aggregates as we were discussing there, rather than that which is just the witness of this entire experience. So on that note, I hope there is something useful there. I should apologize if I've come across as moaning. It's not that I'm ungrateful, and I wish I had a better way of communicating. I can't think of a better way of communicating, otherwise I'd just ask someone who spoke fluent Sinhala and English, of whom I know many, to speak to whomever is involved with water around here. But no, that doesn't seem to work either. Patience and endurance, kanti. The one thing I've learned through this project here And through some of it's been a wonderful experience on the whole, but there have been some moments of frustration where I've really been able to see clearly, vipassana, how I've reacted in those moments of frustration. And I will say, not well in some circumstances. And I've reprimanded, I've admonished myself for my own acts and behaviour of body, speech and mind, the way I've come across, my reactions, the way I've spoken. But I've also seen, through this experience, how far this practice has taken me in the last few years, especially. Because a few years ago, faced with the same frustrating situations, I would not have coped. I would have gone elsewhere. I would have walked. I would have given up. But through this practice of sila, samadhi, panya, and that alone, moral virtue, meditation, and the development of wholesome mind states, reduction of unwholesome mind states, by following the Noble Eightfold Path, I've been able to stick with this project to the bitter end. It's nearly finished. With, yes, some frustrating moments. And hopefully they've not been seen by others as much as they've come into my own focus of attention and regret and remorse. My own feeling of hiri and ottappa chastising me. That is our sense of fear of breaking precepts or of moral dread, but more importantly, conscientiousness or conscientiousness of conscience. I haven't broken any precepts, but in terms of right speech, one can so easily, in tone, in mannerisms, in behavioural characteristics, especially from a different culture, come across as rude, as ungrateful, as unappreciative. And I see this in myself even now. But these are gradually eroded on those stages of enlightenment, in advanced practitioners. We don't expect through this practice to be angels overnight. And it's good we have hiri and ottappa guarding us, our moral conscience, our conscientiousness of that conscience, bringing us back into line continuously. Not necessarily apologizing, but making amends, making changes. On that note, if I haven't already said it, if it's useful, please use it. Otherwise, just let it go. Evam. Evam is a Pali word. It means so it is. The Irish like that term, so it is. And I very much like that, because it is, as Ajahn Sumedho, you all know, Longpo Sumedho's talks, he often says it's like this. Well, so it is, evam. It means just that. So until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi hotu. I'm going on my hunt for water. And also, this is amidst all this rain. And I know what you're thinking, well, put some buckets out and catch the rain. Yes, I'm already doing that. Anyway, good. Okay. Still getting my bearings here. Oh, left one of the lights off.